Donald Trump did something that no sitting president in American history had ever done before. He went on national television to celebrate the unemployment of private citizens. Not to address a war, not to manage a crisis, not to reassure a grieving nation, but to tell the country that a late-night television host getting fired made him happy. That is where we begin, and it only gets more extraordinary from there. Trump's exact words, delivered with the confidence of someone who had thought carefully about them, were these: "Colbert has no talent. I could go outside on the beautiful streets right now and pick a couple of people who would do just as well or better. They'd get higher ratings than he did. He's got no talent. Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has no talent. They're next. They're going to be going." The President of the United States, speaking about American workers losing their jobs, described it as a good thing and promised more of it. Jimmy Kimmel heard every word. He came out onto his stage that night not with a political argument, not with prepared talking points, but with something considerably more dangerous. He was genuinely angry. And when Jimmy Kimmel is genuinely angry and has a microphone and a live audience, the results tend to be historic. He did not ease into it. He did not warm the crowd up with something lighter. He looked directly into the cameras and said what he was thinking. "That son of a..." He let the bleep cover the rest, but nobody in the room or at home needed the full sentence to understand it. The audience reaction was immediate and sustained, but Kimmel was not done. He continued, and what came next was not comedy, it was testimony. "I never imagined we'd ever have a president like this. I hope we never have another president like this again. I never even imagined there would be a situation where the president of our country was celebrating hundreds of Americans losing their jobs. Somebody who took pleasure in that. That, to me, is the absolute opposite of what a leader of this country is supposed to be." That was not a punchline. That was a verdict, delivered on national television by one of the people Trump had specifically named and specifically hoped to see suffer. Meanwhile, over at The Late Show, Stephen Colbert was working a different angle, which is to say he was working all of them simultaneously with the particular energy of someone who has been given more material than he can reasonably use in a single broadcast and has decided to try anyway. Colbert opened with the observation that would set the tone for the evening. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that years from now, we will all remember where we were when we did not watch Donald Trump's speech last night." The audience understood immediately. Trump had convinced every major network to interrupt their primetime programming for what he called an emergency presidential address from the White House. They preempted shows, they cleared schedules, they gave him the full weight of the national broadcast infrastructure. And the emergency, the thing so urgent it required the interruption of every living room in America, was a speech that began with the words, "Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it, and it's going to be great." That was the emergency. Things are great, not a crisis, not a threat, not a moment requiring national unity or presidential gravity. A campaign advertisement that nobody had requested, delivered under the institutional authority of an emergency address. Colbert called it immediately. Old man baloney hands somehow convinced every network to preempt their primetime programming to air a presidential address. Then he noticed something else about the speech that he felt required comment. Something about the pace of Trump's delivery, the particular energy of a man speaking at a speed that suggested some external assistance. "Sir, based on the delivery speed, I think you're going to be coming down real fast. Whatever he's on, I'd like some. Daddy wants speech candy." The audience lost it completely. Colbert had just accused the sitting president of the United States of being chemically enhanced during an official White House address in front of a live audience on national television and made it land as a request rather than an accusation. But even that was not the lead story of the night. Just before taping, the Kennedy Center story broke. Trump's hand-picked board had voted to rename the Kennedy Center, not to honor a new name, not to add a wing, not to acknowledge a donor, to add Trump's name directly to the title of a memorial for an assassinated president. The official new name was announced as the Donald J. Trump and John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. Colbert absorbed this for a moment, then delivered his assessment with the precision of a surgeon. "He can't have his name on a memorial. He's alive, or so his doctors claim." 3 seconds of silence, then the audience came apart. "Or so his doctors claim." 5 words, the suggestion, made lightly and then left hanging in the air, that the question of whether Donald Trump is actually alive was a matter on which reasonable people might disagree, and that his personal physicians would be the ones we'd need to consult for a definitive answer. Colbert was not finished. He stepped back, surveyed the full landscape of what was unfolding, and offered his broader architectural assessment of the moment. Before this is over, he's going to rub his name on everything, every single thing. Why not just replace the Liberty Bell with Trump? He's got a bigger crack. The audience erupted. The comparison was anatomical, historical, and architectural simultaneously. The Liberty Bell, America's most iconic symbol of freedom, cracked down its length and famous for that crack, had just been measured against Donald Trump and found to be the smaller of the two. That is what you call a cultural assassination on live television. Kimmel, not to be outdone, was doing his own forensic accounting on the speech in real time. His conclusion was primarily about duration. It was a long speech. He hasn't been out in a while. If he had talked for 3 more minutes, it would have legally been classified as an Avatar movie. Then he moved into performance, building a recreation of what a Trump rally sounds like from the inside. The circular logic, the self-referential grievance, the statements that are technically words arranged in the order of sentences without necessarily functioning as communication. He did it with the commitment of a man who has done his research. The audience recognized every inflection, but Kimmel had also been doing substantive homework. He had identified what he believed was the actual explanation for the chaotic week of distractions. I'm thinking all of this nonsense is just to change the subject, because legally, the DOJ must release the Epstein files by tomorrow. He let that land. Then he specified, the DOJ must release searchable and downloadable copies, and here's what the law actually says. Records cannot be withheld, delayed, or redacted due to concerns about embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. Read that last sentence again. Embarrassment is not a valid legal basis for withholding records. Reputational harm is not a valid legal basis for withholding records. Political sensitivity is not a valid legal basis for withholding records, which means that whatever is in those files, the legal framework explicitly prevents Trump from hiding behind any of the excuses he might otherwise reach for first. The files come out whether he likes it or not, whether the contents embarrass him or not, whether they damage his reputation or not. The law is, in this specific instance, indifferent to his preferences, which, Kimmel argued, explains the naming of buildings, explains the interruption of prime time, explains the celebration of firing, explains the escalating volume of distractions arriving faster than anyone can process them. A man who is in control of a situation does not behave like this. A man who is in control of a situation does not spend his week renaming memorials and calling talk show hosts untalented. He has things to do. Governing requires attention. Panic, on the other hand, tends to express itself in exactly the kind of behavior the country had been watching for the preceding 7 days. Then Trump posted something that made the entire situation considerably worse for himself. It was a public statement about Colbert's firing, and it read, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." He posted this, "From an official account, with apparent pride," the implication being that he had won something, that the cancellation of a late-night show represented a victory for someone operating at the level of the American presidency. Kimmel's response was to accept the challenge. Not metaphorically, literally. He came out on his show and announced that since Trump appeared to be proposing a talent competition, he was prepared to participate. "I'll come out. I'll tell a few jokes. I'll draw something. I'll play my clarinet." He paused, smiled, and delivered the rest with the timing of someone who has been waiting for the right setup to use a particular line. He can play golf, spank a porn star, and ruin a country. The audience erupted with the specific energy of a crowd that has just heard someone say the thing that everyone was thinking but that no one else had said out loud yet. That was not a joke. That was a resume summary. 3 line items, each one sourced, each one verifiable, each one more damaging than the one before it. Kimmel kept the talent portion going, eventually enumerating everything Colbert can actually do: the performing range, the writing, the musicianship, the acting ability, the physical comedy, stacking each item carefully before landing the implicit conclusion, which was that the competition between a man who plays the clarinet and tells jokes for a living and a man whose documented professional activities include the 3 items previously listed was not, strictly speaking, a competition. Then came the gold card. Trump had unveiled what he called the Get Into America Express card, alternatively titled the Trump Gold Card. For $1 million, a wealthy foreign national could purchase legal visitor status, a pathway to citizenship, and a presidential pardon for one major crime of the purchaser's choosing. Kimmel was already through the first 2 items before the third one registered with the audience. And when it did, the reaction was the specific sound of a room encountering a satirical concept that turns out to be a real government policy: a pardon for one major crime of your choosing, included with the $1 million purchase. Kimmel's assessment was plain and direct. Trump thinks citizenship is something you can sell like a condo or a steak or Eric when he was a baby. The room went somewhere complicated for a moment, caught between the darkness of the implication and the absurdity of the vehicle it arrived in. Then Kimmel deployed theology. He noted that Trump had referenced the quality of incoming migrants, explaining that wealthy people who pay $1 million are, definitionally, the best people. And then Kimmel delivered the Bible verse that Trump had apparently missed in his studies. That's right, the best people are the rich people. It's what Jesus always said. It's in the Bible. He says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle if you pay the needle $1 million. The room absorbed the theological correction. Several people appeared to be genuinely uncertain whether to laugh or applaud the exegesis. But the line that the night kept returning to, the one that Kimmel had said early and that kept resonating through everything that came after, was the one about job losses. Not the jokes, not the Bible verse, not the talent competition. The simple, unadorned statement delivered with the specific anger of someone who has thought about it long enough to know exactly what he believes. That, to me, is the absolute opposite of what a leader of this country is supposed to be. No punchline attached, no audience prompt, just the sentence, placed there and left standing. A leader who celebrates unemployment. A leader who sells citizenship. A leader who names memorials after himself while the person in whose honor the memorial exists was murdered. A leader who interrupts national television to announce that things are great. A leader who panics about document releases by renaming buildings. What Colbert and Kimmel and every other person holding a microphone that week understood was that the anger was not coming from politics. It was not coming from party affiliation or ideological opposition or the standard machinery of late-night commentary. It was coming from something simpler and harder to argue with. The plain observation that the behavior being described was not normal, was not acceptable, was not the standard that any American, regardless of their preferences, had previously held for the office. That a president celebrating the firing of American workers represented a specific and measurable departure from everything the job was supposed to mean. That the opposite of a leader celebrating job losses is a leader who treats the loss of a single American job as a problem requiring attention, not a punchline requiring amplification. Comedy did not win that week because it was funnier than the alternative. Comedy won because the people doing it were telling the truth, and they were telling it in front of cameras, and enough people were watching to make the telling matter. Trump attacked. Kimmel and Colbert responded. The internet, as it tends to do when clarity meets chaos, chose a side. The Epstein files are still coming out. The law is still the law. And the buildings, regardless of what names have recently been attached to them, are still standing exactly where they stood before. Because renaming something does not change what it is, and calling someone untalented while they are still on television does not make them easier to watch or harder to hear. What a leader says when workers lose their jobs tells you everything about what that leader believes a worker is worth. The answer given this week was not enough to stop celebrating. That answer is the one that will be remembered.